friends. How are you doing today? Well, it's great to see you, and welcome to the 41st episode of In the Know, your 25-minute deep dive into the modern employee experience and what we can do to make it better. I'm JD from Exonify, and wow, do we have a big show for you today. Now, I know what you're thinking. It's always a good time over at ITK, but this episode specifically is exciting for three big reasons. First off, this is our last episode of 2023. Aww. I know. I'm quite sad as well. But me and the team are going to take the next few weeks for the holidays, and then we're going to get right back at it with some brand new programming for 2024. And as we head into the final weeks of the year, I wanted to send a big shout out to everyone who's joined us live on LinkedIn. That's you out there in the audience, as well as our guests who have shared their insights into the modern employee experience. And that includes quite a list. So here we go. Jennifer Kalkamugi, Jordan Eakers, Bob Mosher, Sean Kanungo, Lori Niles Hoffman was here, Ryan Dillon, not related, Don Taylor, Carl Kopp, Heather Gilmartin-Adams, Danny Johnson, Elizabeth Thompson, Al Dia, Gloria Chow, Diane Elkins, Kara North, Rachel Horowitz, Stephen Hunt, Melissa Daimler, Dick Johnson, Juan Naranjo, Sam Anderson, and of course, perhaps our most unique guest ever. Remember when artificial intelligence was on the show back in March? We talked about the impact of AI in the workplace. So that's 21 awesome episodes featuring super smart people who are working really hard to make the workplace a better experience for everyone. So be sure to check out the entire ITK catalog over on the Exonify YouTube channel and watch those past episodes for some evergreen, awesome ideas. And over the past year, we've explored employee experience themes across a variety of industries and settings. We discussed employee enablement in healthcare, telecommunications, food service, and in retail. And today, we're diving into an entirely new space, and one that's particularly familiar to me because I spent 10 years working in this industry. We're going to talk about learning and development in hospitality. Now, I spent over half of my career working in operations and L&D at Disney, where I designed and delivered training programs for cast members across the Orlando resort. I remember starting my days as a facilitator with a 6 a.m. class for lifeguards at Typhoon Lagoon, followed by a 10 a.m. session over at the Magic Kingdom for the food and beverage and attractions hosts, and then wrapping up my day with a 1 p.m. gig for the contemporary staff with the housekeeping team. So I was telling a lot of the same stories across all of these different sessions that I was delivering, but I had to find ways to adapt the story to match each unique context for each workplace. Because, great guest service is great guest service, but how it comes to life in each location, each job, and each environment is unique, even within the same company. And that's what makes hotels and resorts such an exciting workplace and such a challenging environment to support as an HR and L&D professional. So how do you enable your frontline teams across lines of business, properties, and regions to make good decisions and do what's right for your guests every day while still maintaining a consistent, high-quality experience? Well, I can't think of anyone better to ask than Dara Pinke, Vice President of Learning and Engagement at Jumeirah Hotels and Resorts, who's here as our final 2023 ITK guest. But before we welcome Dara, there's still one more reason why this is a very exciting episode of ITK. That's because we just passed the 1-year anniversary of my book, The Modern Learning Ecosystem. Yes, he's talking about the book again, but I promise I'm going to make it quick. Because I just wanted to thank everyone out there who supported the book over the past year, including everyone who grabbed a copy, everyone who read it, everyone who dropped reviews, even those who invited me to your events and book clubs to talk about the modern learning ecosystem. I truly appreciate and I'm overwhelmed by your support. And to celebrate that support, I want to give away a copy of the Modern Learning Ecosystem right now to an ITK viewer on LinkedIn. So if you need some fun but insightful L&D reading for your holiday break, drop the keyword ecosystem into the LinkedIn chat right now. We're going to select a random viewer to send a copy of the book and then drop you a note on LinkedIn later this week. So thanks again for supporting the Modern Learning Ecosystem. Get more details on the book at jdwroteabook.com, which is very much a real website. And look out for a brand new chapter to the book dropping in Q1 of 2024. But now let's welcome our special ITK guest, last guest of the year, Dara Pinke. You're a veteran learning and development professional who's worked for 20 years across the hospitality industry. You've worked all over the world supporting hotel operations with renowned brands like Fairmont, Starwood, Esk, Waldorf Astoria, and Marriott. And today, Dara, you're Vice President of Learning and Engagement at Jumeirah Hotels and Resorts, where you enable employees across 26 luxury properties in the Middle East, Europe, and Asia to deliver moments of delight each and every day. So now you're our final In the Know guest of the year. How you doing?
I'm well, thank you. And happy anniversary on the book. That's really cool to hear.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I talk about it a lot on the show. But now let's talk about you and the work that you're doing at Jumeirah. So I've spent a lot of time in hotels, as I mentioned, both as an employee and a guest, but I've never had the chance to visit a Jumeirah property. So could you start us off by painting a bit of a picture of the guest experience at a Jumeirah resort? And really, if you could highlight the role frontline team members play in providing that kind of exceptional brand experience.
Oh, I'd be happy to do that. It's a great question. And at Jumeirah, it really is about what we refer to as memorable moments that foster human connection. So when we think about guest stays, it actually happens well before a guest arrives. And we do a lot of work pre-arrival to prepare so that we are able to offer a sense of, we've been expecting you, we've been waiting for you. And that sense of arrival for our guests really builds confidence that their stay is going to be not only luxurious and wonderful, but also very tailored towards their own individual needs and requirements. And having been in hospitality, you know, the soul of hospitality is really personalization. So we spend a lot of time getting to know our guest, and in there's that fine balance between figuring out the difference between being present but not intrusive, being interested but not inquisitive, and really looking for ways to continue to personalize the stay for a guest. There's lots of opportunity to do that, and the good news is anybody in the guest stay can do that, whether they're doing it specifically for the guests themselves or they're supporting others who are delivering that service to our guests. So high level of personalization, a sense of warm welcome, and really something that's tailored towards what you want.
And that really lines up with something that I mentioned off the top that made working in hotels an exciting workplace for me, was the fact that on one property, you have so many different functions, so many different types of activities, so many different lines of business. You've got the front desk team, the housekeeping team, retail teams, food and beverage teams. But that's really also part of the challenge when it comes to enabling these different teams, given that they all do their jobs differently. They have different workflows, they use different tools, have different requirements. So I'm curious, in your experience, how do you make continuous learning part of these workflows so that people see it as part of the job rather than something that's a disruption from an already busy workday?
Yeah, another great question. I think hospitality as an industry is really fortunate. At Jumeirah, we actually conduct 2 surveys a year for employee sentiment to check in and see how people are feeling in terms of engagement. And those surveys actually give us insight into the appetite for learning. And the good news is people are deeply interested in growing and learning and developing. I think the majority of adults, if you sat them down and said, what do you want every day? Do you want the exact same thing, or would you like to grow and learn? I think we all know the answer would be. And when it comes down to, so there's the interest and the appetite to do it. It's not really viewed as a disruption. It's usually the concern around having the space and time to learn. So I think our role is really about employing a variety of platforms for learning. So not just sticking with the traditional classroom. If you are in classroom, making it crisp and straightforward so that you can balance that operational need that you have lots of experience in with fulfilling the learning and career aspirations, but also using things like e-learning, on-the-go learning and daily shift briefings, using tools and platforms like Exonify, where we can make use of that AI function that tailors learning towards the individual in these quick sound bites that they can get every day, and then also to experience the reinforcement that happens every day. So I think it really comes down to creating space and time to learn, and helping people find ways to tailor the learning towards their interests and their career aspirations.
Yeah, so as you say, it goes beyond kind of each individual activity or individual piece of content to crafting an experience that's really built around the reality of what the day-to-day experience of work is like for people who are doing these different types of jobs. And within that experience, you're obviously focused on helping people develop different types of skills. And there are certain skills that, pretty much everyone who's working in the resort needs, customer service being a great example. But then there are certain skills that are unique to the job. So if you're a lifeguard, you have a very different set of skill requirements than you are if you're someone who's working at the front desk. So I'm curious, in your experience, are there certain skills that you think make the biggest difference when it comes to enabling frontline teams to be successful? And then are there certain skills that are maybe more challenging to develop within these types of teams?
That's, I think with your background in Disney, I think you're probably going to anticipate where I'm going to go with this, but we firmly believe that skill can be taught. And I think one of the mistakes hospitality providers sometimes do is by trying to overcomplicate what we're teaching. There's a very simple, straightforward foundation of skills that everybody needs, as you've mentioned. And what we really focus on is we want to hire for the right attitude. We want people who are deeply invested in the idea of caring and supporting and serving others, and who have a core of empathy. And empathy is more of a behavior, although you can develop it to a certain level of skill. So when it comes down to what makes the biggest difference, I would say enabling people to find their empathy and employ their empathy. And I think that the easiest way I spot that is when people are walking through the lobby, and are they trying to go from A to B, and the head's down, and the sometimes the hands hovering over the name badge, or are they just kind of on that mission to get through there, or is the head up, and are they making eye contact and looking to see if anybody needs something, or if someone wants to engage with them? I view that as a form of empathy for sure. So I think that makes a huge difference. It's, as soon as you want something or need something as a guest, you kind of look around, and if someone makes eye contact right away, you feel like you're being taken care of. The one that I find that is tougher to develop is risk taking, and I know that's kind of an unusual response maybe for hospitality, and I want to clarify that. What I mean is really in the field of empowerment and decision making. So hotel companies love to talk about empowerment. We love to say we empower our people, but sometimes we start at the wrong end of that process. We cheerlead and coach our frontline employees and say, you're empowered, you can make decisions, but we miss the boat on teaching our leaders how to empower their teams and how to have the correct responses when people do take a risk and make a decision. And I think that's encouraging people to do that, but also explaining and educating leaders on how to effectively empower their teams, I think is a little bit tougher.
Absolutely. And when you talk about kind of these themes and skills around empathy and risk taking, I think it really emphasizes the fact that hospitality is not a transactional business, right? So if you think about in a retail environment, an associate may see a customer for 30 seconds and then just never see them again. But as you mentioned, at a resort, you're working with the same guest for days, or even potentially, I was at a resort recently for an entire week. So I saw the same employees every day, and they were serving me food every day. So we got to know one another a little bit, and it gives you a chance to really, as you started your conversation at the top, really emphasizing that personal touch and that personal experience. And that's really made, I think, personalization, especially for a luxury brand, pretty much an expectation at this point. But I don't think we talk about it a lot on the customer facing, the CX side of the world. But I think there's also a benefit for employees if we look at their experience from a right fit support personalization angle, so we can make sure that they have a great experience for the duration of their stay with us as well. So how do you think about personalizing the experience for the employee as well, so that each person is getting the right support to learn and grow and feel empowered in their role?
Yeah, I think that how this works, that nobody wants to feel like they're just a number, or that nobody understands or knows them, regardless of what role we're playing. But we take personalization seriously, and that applies to our colleagues as well. That mention I made earlier around getting to know people even before they arrive, that applies to our colleagues. We sometimes in some companies, you may sign a contract or agree to a role, and there's a gap in between that process and then your arrival day. You kind of don't hear much, or you might hear something a little more tactical around paperwork, or in Dubai, you'd hear more about visas, this sort of thing. But for us, it's an opportunity to really begin beyond the recruitment process to build that relationship, to get to know our people. And we employ something in Axonify, a pre-arrival pathway, where we actually provide insight and information and snippets about our culture, meeting your leaders, and it gets people excited, keeps them engaged. And it also gives us a chance to hear from them about what's interesting them, and a little bit of insight into who they are. And then they join. We have a standard operating practice of your first day of work is orientation. So you don't go on the floor. You have orientation for the first 2 days you're with us, and that's where you get even more connection with our brand, with our hotels, with our leaders. And once you're finished with orientation, your leader or a leader from your department comes to pick you up, often accompanied by a departmental trainer. And that introduction's made. And that's the person who's going to concierge you through your learning into your role. And that's really the start we're looking for in terms of making sure people feel seen, that they feel understood, they have connections and contacts already, and they're given that opportunity to really open up and be receptive to learning. That really sets a good foundation too for, and we hire experienced people, and we hire across an entire spectrum of levels of experience, but it also encourages people to give us their ideas and their input right away. If we can open that door right away, we just find that the relationship is so much more confident in terms of contributing ideas, telling us what's working and what's not. But that starts from day one.
And you're really speaking to putting the amount of effort and thought and design into the experience of the employee like you would from a brand perspective with customers. And I know to do that, especially at the scale of a global business like Jumeirah, that's going to require a robust learning and development strategy. And as a veteran HR professional, you've played a key role in building people strategies across a variety of hospitality brands. So what would you say are the key elements of a robust and successful L&D program like the one that you've outlined so far? And then are there certain kind of common mistakes that you see L&D teams make that they should try to avoid when shaping their L&D strategy?
Yeah, I feel really fortunate in the career that I've had, and every location I've worked has taught me something new about how to build a better strategy, build a better program. But there's kind of three things that I would say are top of mind in this area for me personally. One is think globally. A lot of hospitality companies are global, and it's really vital that when you're looking at a piece of content or a program or an initiative that you want to design and deploy out into your organization, if you're not already thinking about how it will be received or is it relevant for that location, you can really misstep or spend time that you don't need to spend. So I think thinking globally, and part of that is also connecting with stakeholders globally as well to hear their input on what is meaningful and matters to them. Because if you don't sort of start checking on buy-in at the start, you may build something beautiful, but it's just not received. And that's really just a complete waste of time, to be honest. So you have to kind of figure out what your stakeholders are looking for, and that applies to all of your locations around the world. I mentioned earlier that sometimes learning can be overcomplicated. We L&D people, we love to fall in love with a piece of content, and we sometimes get caught up in our own words or a phrase or an idea. And internally, what people are looking for is just clear, crisp information that matters to them in their roles or in their careers that they can absorb and think about and contribute to. And you need everybody to understand that piece of information. There's nothing more powerful than a team who all gets it, who all knows what's needed, and who are all moving in the same direction. And you can't do that if it's overly complicated. And I don't mean watering it down or anything along those lines, but just being very mindful of the pieces that you're teaching and in what order, so that they're more accessible. And I think that's the other piece, is accessibility. I think some of the things I've seen in terms of learning design or in learning strategy is assuming that everybody has a computer or that everybody has a moment in their shift to pull out their phone and use it. Some roles you just can't, as a lifeguard, you can't be sitting there looking at your phone. It's not possible. It's making it too long, or even here's a classic one, is failing to make people aware that the learning actually exists. So you may have a general manager call you and say, I could really use a program about such and such. And you say, we designed that 9 months ago. And so failing to market and help people understand what already exists out there. So in summary, thinking globally is really critical. Making sure that it's clear, crisp, and straightforward so it's easily consumable, and then making it accessible for all positions where you want people to learn that information. I think that's key.
If anyone's going to pause the episode and need to rewind and watch a segment again, it's that last segment. So many great practical tidbits there. But there's one thing or kind of a couple things I want to dig into, but especially that first point around thinking globally, because there's no way around it. It's hard to enable a large distributed workforce like the workforce that you're supporting. And one of the most fundamental, but also the most significant challenges that an L&D team faces in this type of environment is how do we effectively embrace cultural differences within the workforce? And a simple example of that is language, because translating content can be an expensive and time-consuming process. And we're seeing great advances in that area right now with what AI-powered technology can help us do, but it's still one of those biggest barriers that we face to providing an equitable workplace experience, especially for the frontline workforce. So I'm curious, with the audience that you support, who's spread out around the world, how do you overcome common challenges like cultural differences and language preferences to make sure that everyone has that equitable learning and support experience in a global workforce?
Yeah, I think that you and I have probably both seen programs that have only been launched in one language or two, and somebody calls you from halfway around the world and says, "What would you like me to do with this?" So these images look great, but or they end up translating it themselves. So I do feel the viewpoint of thinking globally is really critical here, and I feel strongly about translations. I do feel diversity is one of our values at Jumeirah, and I would extend that even a further step into inclusion, and then into belonging. And I think if you aren't mindful of things just as straightforward as language, you're leaving people behind, and teams don't function well that way. And it doesn't even have to be related to location. In Dubai, we have incredibly diverse communities in our hotels, and that means we may require several languages, in terms of what language people prefer to learn in. So I do champion translations. One of my techniques is to ask for internal help with translation. So lots of people have relied on Google Translate or translation, services, but you do need a native speaker to verify that for you. And my tactic is to go to somebody who knows the topic, who speaks the language, and then also ask for their input on the content, and to say, does this make sense? Like, does this concept land? And one of the things I catch a lot of times is the use of phrases or idioms that we had a program where somebody wrote, "We're going to mop the floor with the competition." This wasn't at my current role, but that doesn't translate. It just doesn't translate. And somebody just said, I don't know what this means. And so you can get some really great feedback internally if you ask for help and support in terms of verifying translations. So I think that's key. And then it comes down to finding great technology around subtitling. Imagery can never be underrated. I love a great series of images or a lookbook, even for people who are looking at content in, maybe a native English speaker looking at it in English. Imagery can be really powerful to illustrate the emotion or the feeling that you're looking to create in a process. And for me, it comes down to making sure people feel included and that they're part of what we're trying to build. So we know when people feel included, work just goes better, it moves faster, we have higher retention rates. And when you deploy training materials to the organization, you say, here's a new program, everybody feels like they're a part of it. So I think it's key.
Yeah, this was something that was really driven home for me back during my time working with Disney, where we were rolling out an instructor-led program across Walt Disney World. So it's one location, it's the size of San Francisco, but it's one place. But we took into consideration people's various language preferences. And we didn't just translate the content because it was instructor-led sessions. So we translated all the materials and videos and things like that. But then we went the step further and worked with a translation group to live translate the session. So I, as a facilitator, stood next to a translator. I said what I said, and then that person translated it into Spanish or Haitian Creole or whatever the language of the audience was. But to make that work, we had to sit down with the translation team and go through the script and say, do these words make sense in the language that we're going to be delivering them into? And then how do we change the script? And then how do I change my delivery so that it is easy for everyone to understand and I'm not leaving people behind? And we went so far as to, those classes were longer than the other sessions because we allowed the breathing room for the translation to take place and then to make sure there was a level of understanding because it was being done without technology at that particular time. So Great example of the effort required to make it work for everyone, include everyone.
I love that example. I've had something similar in a former company where we did live translation side by side, and it can take a little bit longer, but the depth of response and the team atmosphere in the room trumps everything. I was first of all, I was fascinated because you're wearing an earpiece and someone's speaking in one ear and someone's speaking in the other, but it's just a very interesting process. But I found the whole thing very unifying as a facilitator for the team in the property, but also for me as a facilitator, where I felt I could clearly understand what people were offering in their responses. So I'm there with you.
Yeah, and now we're almost at the place where I'm constantly evaluating technologies that allow me to live translate into a variety of languages via technology without the support of the organization. So I do a lot of speaking at professional events and conferences and things like that, and often rely on the conference organizer to be the one who has to insert that step, because I don't have the resources, I don't control the environment and things like that. But we're almost at a place with technology now where I can do it myself, similar to the way that I can caption my own presentations without requiring support from event organizers. So really interesting place when it comes to kind of fostering this level of equity and inclusion within various types of content experiences. But there's one more question I want to ask before I got to let you go. Let's go big picture with this one, because obviously we talked about a lot of change that's taking place in the work we do. A lot of changes happen in the workplace, especially the past couple of years. And I would say that few industries have been impacted the same way that hospitality has, where companies have really been pushed to reimagine the guest experience and the employee experience over the past couple of years. So how do you think these shifts in the workplace are going to continue to impact learning and development? And how is it going to evolve our training practices so we can meet the needs of a changing workforce?
Yeah, this is so topical. I was literally on a call with somebody about this yesterday. And we've kind of moved into this concept of micro learning, bite-sized learning. This has been around for a while now, but I think we need to just continue to look at what that actually means. This kind of ties into what we were talking about earlier in terms of space and time to learn in the job and for your own development, for your own interest. And I'd really like to see our industry move towards true micro-learning approach. And I think of this as 90 seconds or less, where you just have a stack of content where you can, depending on how much time you have and the level of interest you have, you can watch one piece, two pieces, three, whatever works for you in that moment. You can go back to a single piece to look at if you can't remember that step. But just to make it very clear, very crisp, and truly micro. The conversation I was having, someone was referring to it as micro learning, but some of it was 25 minutes long. And I said, there's no micro about that. It's more macro than micro. But I'd like to see more of that short, sharp element of learning and to continue to drive that so people can really say, oh yeah, what do I need to do for a guest profile? Okay, I'm going to take a look. And how do I do cross training? Okay, there's a policy. Okay, I'm going to look that up and just get a 90-second soundbite. And then if I want more, I can go for more. And I think that would help us insert even more on-the-go learning in positions. So that's one. And then it's the obvious answer of AI. We're all very interested. We're all sort of also watching how this evolves. But I'm really interested. We know it'll have an impact on learning, everything from helping us write content and design programs. But I'm really more keen to hear about how AI can be employed to personalize learning pathways for people. And this is starting to bloom in the industry a bit more, where people are going to be able to say, this is the job I do, here's my skill set, here's my level of experience, here's where I think I want to go, how do I get there? And AI is already hard at work in several different ways in being able to recommend not only pathways to people, but also learning along those pathways to help you get there. And I think when we go back to that theme of personalization, to be able to have a personal career coach to show you the way to get from point A to B, I think will be a game changer.
Absolutely. That's a great place for us to wrap up today. So Dara Pinke, thank you so much for joining us as the final guest of the year on ITK. How can people connect with you and follow the awesome work that you're doing with your team at Jumeirah?
Thank you, JD, as well. And congratulations once again on the book. I think that's just awesome to see. You can find me on LinkedIn, just like most other people. That's where I kind of hang out and showcase what we do at Jumeirah. Yeah, feel free to reach out.
Awesome. Well, thank you again so much to Dara Pinke for sharing how Jumeirah enables their frontline teams to delight resort guests around the world every day. And that's officially a wrap for ITK 2023. Producer Sam and team are already cooking up some awesome conversations for 2024. So be sure to subscribe for show announcements at Axonify.com/ITK. You can also hit me up on LinkedIn if there's someone that you think we should hear from on a future episode. Plus, you can binge watch all of the past ITKs on the Axonify YouTube channel or listen to In the Know on your favorite podcast app. So why not add some ITK to your holiday playlist? We may not be dropping new episodes in the next few weeks, but we did just drop some new reading material that I want you to know about, because Axonify just released our ultimate guide to frontline employee communication. So if you're looking to craft communication campaigns that actually reach your frontline team with the latest information they need to make great decisions on the job, be sure to check out our proven communication tactics. Grab the guide now at Axonify.com/communication. Until next time, I've been JD. Now you're in the know, and always remember to ask yourself the important questions. Like, what did the photon say when the front desk person asked if he needed help with his luggage? No thanks, I'm traveling light. I'll see you next time. In the Know is produced by Sam True. Visual design by Mark Anderson. Additional production support by Risha McCutcheon, Andrea Miller, Malia Bernard, Tung La, and Megan Kay. The show is written and hosted by JD Dillon. ITK is an Axonify production. For more information on how Axonify helps frontline workers learn, connect, and get things done, visit Axonify.com.